Okay, we're now going to have a look at the key influences that play a part in operations management. So those key influences are relating to things such as globalisation, technology, the environment, etc. And the influences it must be said that those influences have, as it says there, a dual effect on businesses. Firstly, they can cause the business to undergo change and to look to adjust to the external factors. And a business being responsive to change is a constant battle for management. How do we juggle managing the necessary change or potential necessary change with carrying out the business activities on a day-to-day basis at the moment? And also the second effect is the threat and the opportunity that these influences represent to the operations process. So there's an opportunity to take advantage of an influence. What might that mean for the overall operations process? So you can see there a bit of an example in terms of Kellogg's. They changed their recipe to reduce the sugar, the salt, and increase fibre as customers' expectations on health changed. That influence, the fact that the customers were saying, no, it's too high in sugar and we're not going to purchase that product as much as we have been purchasing it, means that Kellogg's needed to make a decision. They changed the ingredients, but that also has a flow-on effect to the operations process because that product then needs to be manufactured. That needs to be manufactured with that in mind. So there are the 7 influences: globalisation, technology, quality expectations, cost-based competition, government policies, legal regulation, and environmental sustainability, and then corporate social responsibility. So this video is going to focus on globalisation. You've covered globalisation a lot in your junior years in high school and even in the Year 11 course, and I think you have a good understanding of it. But just to reiterate, it refers to the removal of barriers of trade between nations, characterised by increasing integration between national economies. The fact that, as a lot of these things in this diagram refers to, the world is becoming a smaller place, smaller in the context of the ability to access goods and services from different countries, for different places around the world. Different inputs in the operations process can be accessed globally, which can be at a lower cost, or they can be more technologically advanced, they can be superior in their quality. It also means, though, from an operations perspective, there's the opportunity to outsource functions of operations. There's the consideration of global competition, because global competitors can come and disrupt a domestic market. There's greater access to labour, because organisations can potentially import labour from overseas. They can import intellectual capital, so people's knowledge. Also, finance and capital can be accessed more readily overseas, and that can therefore reduce the operating costs of a business as well. And all of these influences have an impact on the overall operations process. So some of the key influences or impacts that globalisation has on operations relate to the materials. So being able to globally source materials from any corner of the globe that suit the particular business, that are the quality of the quality that the business desires and are of the cost that the business desires. I mentioned importing of capital before. So globalisation can have an impact on operations because labour can be accessed from overseas. And it's not just that the labour might be cheaper, it might be that the labour is skilled to be able to carry out the part of the operations process that management needs. Facilities, the ability to move factories overseas. Bonds move their manufacturing of underpants and socks and singlets, etc., and t-shirts from Australia overseas in about 10 years ago now, and that was because it was cheaper, both from a labour perspective and also the facilities were cheaper overseas. Customers, it has an impact. Globalisation has an impact on customers because their trends change with global trends, and that means that operations needs to keep pace with manufacturing the products to suit those particular customers. Competition, increased exposure to overseas means there's greater competition. That means potentially the business needs to find ways to reduce costs to remain globally competitive. Finance, I mentioned before, access to capital. Globalisation has meant that businesses have been able to source or seek capital from overseas rather than just being reliant on domestic capital. So, your domestic banks or your domestic shareholders. Businesses have been able to go to the US, to go to the UK, to go to Asia and say, radio, we need 100 million, we need 500 million of capital we don't have to just get that capital from Australia. We can go elsewhere and overseas and access it, and that's ultimately going to have a positive impact on the business's bottom line and operations. Bit of an example in respect to Qantas and globalisation. Qantas, I've mentioned in class before, but Qantas has outsourced their maintenance function overseas. They've also outsourced their IT operations in an effort to reduce costs. That's a direct example of globalisation and operations and the influence that globalisation has had on operations. And there's a couple of other elements to Qantas there, but I'll let you read in your own time. Globalisation also relates to supply chain management and the overall, the global web, if you will, and where is supply coming from, the supply that's required for operations, and that globalisation has meant again that supply can come from any corner of the globe. Okay, and we'll leave that piece of information with respect to Qantas to class. Okay, the next video is going to focus on technology, and I'll stop that there.